Bay. So the NFL draft's been gone for about a week or two, but this is interesting to me. It's always like, so what states? I don't think there's anybody on here that would be surprising because even if you say, okay, what about New Jersey? New Jersey's fed the NFL over the years. Florida, Texas, these are the number of players drafted into the NFL draft from those specific states. Georgia, who's like on this heater, not just because of their program, but because of the talent. California, Louisiana, New Jersey, down to Alabama, Maryland, North Carolina, and Ohio. Now, one state that I was surprised did not show up was Pennsylvania because they've always been a pretty good feeder too. So those are the overall. Now, per capita, what do you guys think? What state or what part of the country per capita feeds the NFL? This is kind of offset from actually who did.
If it was per capita, then like if Hawaii had one, then maybe that would be the math would be slanted.
They're fifth?
Yeah.
It's Louisiana.
Yeah.
No, they're second.
Okay, wow.
The District of Columbia.
Oh, God.
Did not see that coming.
Asterisk. It's not even a state.
One of them was Caleb. I'm just telling you, per capita. One out of 172,000 people drafted. All the others on that list, besides D.C., are one out of every 400 or so more thousand that were drafted. So that was just a little bit of a trivia note off the top of the show about the draft.
Yeah, and look, I'll just toot the horn for Florida again.
That gap was a little bit shorter.
It's getting to get a little shorter. Yeah. The biggest deal, and I'll say about Florida, is that, when they were keeping all those players at home, they were winning national titles between the three schools. Now that those guys have started to leave and go, like, it's not like Georgia's also gotten way better than they were. They've put a hole in recruiting's gotten more national, but make no mistake, Alabama and Georgia's national titles, much like Oklahoma's success, like where they went down south and plucked the best guys out of Texas and were dominating the Big 12, the same thing of Alabama and Georgia were doing that. They were LSU too, and Louisiana's a great state, but those schools in particular could go down into Florida like nobody else could. Clemson's one of them too, and just go down and be like, yeah, I know that back in the day you would have gone to one of the Big Three, but they're pretty boring now, so coming up here.
Well, the Big Three have slipped a little bit, even though Florida State had their run. Florida has slipped. Miami has slipped. Florida with 30 to lead the way. I think because Georgia and Alabama football there has always been a big deal, but they're starting to feed the system a lot more when it comes to elite players entering college football from the high school level.
I think if you look at how Georgia and Alabama and Louisiana have maybe invested in high school football a little bit more over the years than they have before, I think the state of Florida could do a lot better. And again, having spent the last, 34 years of my life, in either of those two states, and being able to kind of compare them, the talent is very similar in Florida and Texas. The coaching is far better, and the commitment to high school sports is a lot better in Texas. And that's all the way across the board. That's not just football. That's everything.
Yeah, the facilities.
And football helps benefit all that stuff. But, look, if you have a really good football program, there's no reason where you're not going to have a really good baseball facility because all facilities are good. And you can only redo your football stadium so many times with the money that kind of comes in to back up sports. That's the kind of difference. Florida just maybe has some pockets of cities that just have some just dudes. Like Miami, I would guarantee you of that Florida, most of them are from the Miami area.
Yeah, who do you guys also think is the number one most drafted high school out of Florida?
I'm going to say the one in
Miami Northwestern?
Miami-Dade?
No, it's IMG Academy.
IMG Academy.
They had
Which
three
has
draft
players
picks. Guess
out
how
of
many
Texas.
of those? They had 3 draft picks. Guess how many of those guys are from Florida?
0 of them?
0 of them are from Florida.
Yeah.
So
also this shouldn't count.
So those are little intricacies to this poll that just popped into my head because I thought about, there's IMG that counts towards Florida, but I mean, no, it's Florida's, a great state, hotbed of talent. Texas, Louisiana, we say the same schools every year, so that's not surprising to see that list turn out that way. Some years Texas is on top. I don't know the last time California was. I'm sure it was recently. But, Nevada, I think there's a lot of talent in Las Vegas. They also have Bishop Gorman out there.
Yep.
So I think that's a place that's becoming – I just feel like I see more and more guys are from Las Vegas in college football when I'm looking through some of the names, like Aroma Dunze, for example, is a guy listed out of Las Vegas, and that's just obviously a place where a lot of people are flocking. So that one's, I think, going to be around, growing more and more as time goes on. But, yeah, Georgia's really taken a step up. They were always in the mix, but I think that they've certainly raised their stock, so to speak, just pound for pound with a lot of the other usual suspects. So, yeah, I mean, you look at it, you want to get into, like, the heart of college football demographics. Where are all the talented guys? They're in the Southeast. I mean, look, Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, they're all right there. They're in the same spot. Florida, Southeast, Texas, Southeast,
Alabama.
Georgia, Southeast, Louisiana, Southeast, Alabama, Southeast, North Carolina. I mean, not Southeast, but you see what I'm getting at here. That's where all the players are. That's where, per capita, the most talent is coming from. So I think, when you talk about the SEC and their dominance, you have to take that into account as well. Is they're dealing with the biggest brands, but they're also dealing with, if you cut out the country and said, where's all of the majority of the talent, it's in that Southeast pocket where all their schools reside. So I don't think that's a coincidence by any means.
Now, Bishop Gorman, where Adunze went to school.
Adunze.
And 3 different players. You mentioned IMG. Also, the number 1 in Texas was Ryan with Jatavian Sanders and also Brandon Coleman, who went to Washington, drafted by Washington, Denton Ryan High School up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area. Frisco Lone Star had a couple of players, Jalen Ford and Trey Taylor, drafted into the NFL. So those are a couple of schools, and we know Lone Star. Where was Mims from? Was he from Lone Star? That's what I thought. Yeah, Marvin Mims, hell of a player at Oklahoma. So there we are with that. Now, we've heard about the possibility of whenever, at some point, the separation of what happens with college football's FBS, the G5, have to wonder at times. I think they're in a pretty good spot right now. They're in the college football playoff, even if it's just the one school. But the possibility, John Bryce, who joins us in 10 or 15 minutes, they might end up with their own top 25. Good idea or not?
I think it's a good idea because they've got to start marketing themselves separate of everyone else. 12-team playoff and them being involved in that is great. I'm very happy that one of them will get in. And there are probably years where maybe 2 of them might deserve it. You never know. But there are – because, look, if – I think, a couple of years ago, that team that Willie Fritz had at Tulane could have beaten several teams that would have been in a college football playoff, just because they were so good and so tough. And playoff games are it's not about who's better all season, it's about who's better that day. Who's to say that Tulane wouldn't have been better those days?
The question is not the one-game playoff game, but is could they have done that for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, which is going to be interesting to see once we expand it to 12 this year.
Absolutely. But everything that's happened this offseason and the last couple of years, all they get are scraps. Well, we're going to include you. So, yes, you get a team in. For sure. You're going to get a team in. And that almost feels like it's done to placate everybody going, well, what are these people playing for? And so you have to do something. Look, Ari Wasserman did a post-spring top 25 on The Athletic today, and none of the schools were in the group of 5. And look, that's due in large part because of the Big 12 has plucked probably the schools that were most likely from the group of 5 to be regularly ranked in there. Tulane is a new coach. He's not going to put Liberty in there. So Boise State, kind of in flux right
UTSA?
now. UTSA, like all those things. So there's only a few you can put in there, but as the mega conferences get bigger, and when you've got 18, 16 of these leagues, well, shoot. I mean, what are you going to – and then Notre Dame in there. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how are these teams going to have any spot in a ranking to say that they are what they are?
Craig, one of the things that was mentioned, and we'll have John here in a minute, if the number 2 team in the group of 5 plays the number 6 group of 5 team, that should or could attract more viewers and attention.
I mean, yeah, it could. It should. But I don't know that the rankings really – change that up. I think it's going to be confusing. Like, are you going to clarify is the G1 number 5 versus the AP number 23, or how does that work? I think that's a little confusing, but I think a few things about this. I think it's a nice idea on the surface, at least, of of being a good way to bring some attention that otherwise you're not getting, as we've already laid out here, that there's a lot of people that just don't pay attention, don't care, don't include, don't want those schools a part of the main rankings, or just don't give them the time of day, as we've seen with a lot of polls throughout the years. People just don't pay attention, and I'll put this recognizable team at 24 rather than the undefeated G5 team because this team's in the ACC or the SEC or whatever. There's a lot of that disrespect that goes on. So I think to fight for the right to have some proper attention, I think this is certainly a way to go about doing that and potentially bring more eyeballs to that product. I don't think it's a game changer. I don't think it's anything that brings you significantly more eyeballs, but I think, we all get dazzled by these rankings. Like, why do we have preseason rankings? It's so that they can sit there and go, well, number 1's playing number 5 on opening weekend, and we don't know that they're the number 1 and number 5 teams before the season's even started, really. Like, we can guess, but that is something that attracts people. So if you're flipping through channels and you see 5 versus 10, maybe you are more apt to stop than you would be if it was just saying, Tulane versus SMU and they didn't have any numbers beside their names. I don't know. That's what you're banking on, at least. And having those teams feel like they're actually fighting for something that they're a part of and not just, lucky to get a table scrap, I think is something worthwhile as well. You got to feel like you matter, and I do feel like a lot of the moves that are being made are telling them otherwise. So to go out and strike out on your own and try to create something that just drums up further discussion and further interest, I think is a smart play on their part right now, more so than ever before, because it does feel like they're sort of fading into the background as the money gets more lopsided and the TV deals, become more questionable moving forward. I will say, though, at the same time, I just feel like you're playing right into the hand of the bigger schools. Like, this is what I said about the what was it, the last thing that we talked about? It was their own playoff.
Yeah.
It's like, I bet Greg Snakey, well, I'm sorry calling him Greg Snakey. I thought about that the other day.
That's pretty good.
Greg Snakey. No, Greg Sankey is probably like, thank you guys. You're doing it for us. Just get out of the way. Go start your own thing. Get it all geared up, and you can just slide right into that because, you're probably not going to be a part of our future playoff vision, except for when you're lucky and you have a team that is able to slide on in there on occasion, like a Houston when they were under Tom Herman, or any other number of examples here in more recent years. Tulane recently, not so much Liberty. Like, that was just such a bad look last year for them against Oregon in the bowl game. That really just deflated a lot. But I do feel like you're kind of leaning into the whole idea that you are separate and that you're not a part of the same thing, and that this is a step towards doing that, whether intentionally realizing that or not. And I asked this about the playoff idea, and it was like, well, you got to do something, and I agree with that, but I also do think that while saying that, you could also be playing into the hands of those who are wanting you to go off and start your own thing and do your own thing. So that might be a little bit of a slippery slope. And then again, I don't know what you do about it anyways. So maybe this is what you have to do, is just do what you can, try new things, and you know what? Either way, you're probably going to end up in the same spot, so why not try to create something before that death knell comes, so to speak.
John Bryce will discuss it with us next, and also we'll have a coach of a G5 and G.J. Kenny at 3:45.
This does have a little bit of a "you can't fire me, I quit" kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
If in the most negative sense of the story, but. Again, you may have to do that anyway, Craig,
right.
Like you said, because if they're just taking steps to eliminate you anyway and box you out to where you're never really going to be a part of this, and they're going to throw you a bone to have one team be in this thing and everybody else not even close to considered.
Pat you on the head and make you think that you're lucky to have that spot to begin with.
Then you might as well just say, look, if you guys are eventually going to break off and do something different, and look, that's not only the case for this, but Charlie Baker's proposal was to tier it off anyway. And those schools, I mean, there might be some that are willing to say, all right, well, you know what? Louisiana Monroe, we're going all in. Duck Dynasty guys, how much money you got? We're gonna rock with this. But most of those schools would be like, well, this is where we're gonna have to be because we don't have Texas oil money that's coming in for us. So they're just going to have to stay in the tier they are. So might as well, I mean, this is a pretty, I would say, minor thing to prepare for it.
Right.
But it's not stupid to stock the storm shelter if a storm's coming.
Yeah, no, I think that's the best way of putting it. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you sit on your hands and think, oh, they'll keep us included, we'll be a part of it. We may only get like one piece of chicken compared to everybody else is getting a full plate, but at least we'll still be included. I mean, you can be happy to just have a seat, I guess, but I think that they're wanting more than that. They're wanting actual opportunity, and your opportunity is very limited. So, yeah, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you play into the hand of those above you, they really don't have a lot of consideration for you to begin with. So even if you do still stay included, to what extent is that really beneficial, big picture for everybody that's in that situation at that level of football? So, yeah, I think you're doing a good advertising move. I am curious of how it's marketed. I know the coaches are going to vote on it, so I like that there's that. Although they won't show like who voted for who, and they won't have that level of transparency, which I don't think is like a big deal, at least early on. But yeah, it's an interesting idea, and I don't see anything negative or wrong with it. Like there's nothing that goes wrong with it. But I do just wonder if you are, again, intentionally or unintentionally playing into the hand. But you got to do something. You can't just sit on your hands and expect a magical lifeboat to come and save you guys.
Don't live in fear. Don't live under your sheets or under a rock because of what might happen. All right, here are the this is from Phil Venzer, our buddy in Vegas, put this up from College Football Network. The all-name team. Now, the first name on this list is in the portal. He's not with Oklahoma. General Booty, the quarterback. Jajensky Schlenbaker is also among the all-name team.
Jajensky Schlenbaker. I like, let's see.
Rowdy
Beers is the best one.
I still think Dakotas Crawford, even though he left Nebraska, is still just a great name because his NIL made so much sense. Rowdy Beers, yep.
Parker Titsworth certainly is not cashing in. He's probably not allowed to cash in on the NIL that would be really acceptable.
He should go to a school in Florida.
Yeah, what business is associated with Parker?
I mean,
Hooters.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. My God, yes.
Yeah. Just say
it. They'd like a little more double entendre in it than just
Fat Watch for Tulane, Jaden Muskrat. So there's 3 or 4 that seem to be pretty intriguing, but that was the all-name team. Thought we'd pop that up there.
King Large, a combo meal at McDonald's.
King Large and Parker Titsworth could date.
Sure. Could.
But yeah, no, Parker Titsworth, I'm sure, has gone and been like, hey, look, I've got Scores really wants to give me an NIL deal. They're like, well, that's one of the 3 things you can't take money from.
Yep.
Right.
There you go.
That's the problem with that name. But yeah, that would be an interesting couple. So long as they got the order correct there in the newspaper, their wedding announcement would be a great. When Conan O'Brien used to do that bit of the funny couple headlines, that would have been right up that alley.
All right, a couple of men's basketball notes in the break. Seton Hall, Kadari Richardson, the number 1 ranked player, at least by ESPN in the transfer portal, former Seton Hall guard, has committed to Rick Pitino to play at St. John's. He had visited Oklahoma, Syracuse, Miami, USC, but the Brooklyn native will just walk across the street from Seton Hall to play for St. John's and Rick Pitino. Also, former Kansas great Danny Manning has joined the staff of former Tad Boyle, former KU player who played under Larry Brown back in the mid-'80s. Danny Manning has now been added to Tad Boyle's staff at the University of Colorado.
I'm still waiting for the day where he gets to finally be the KU AD. He was, by the way, he was at the game that I went to this year, and they put the camera on him and then Rob Riggle, and Rob Riggle got a really big round of applause. Danny Manning, honestly,
he won a national championship for them.
I'm surprised. No, he got such a good round of applause. I'm surprised that nobody ran him down a drink after that. Danny Manning's here, and just like a line of people like, here's a soda.
Carried KU on their back, and I think it was '88. Oklahoma had a great team with Tubbs, I think it was, and Manning and KU got hot to win a national title. He was one of the all-time greats, no question, in men's college basketball history. We'll take a break here. Come back with Joe.